Nick, can we talk some Sweet 16 now? The real 16, I guess, as some people may argue. I mean, if you ask me, the Crown has more teams playing late into March, but that's fair, to each their own. What's in your eyes? What's the most lopsided matchup for these last games for this upcoming round?
Oh man, the most lopsided matchup. I kind of feel like Houston's going to put it on Purdue. That would be mine. The only thing that makes me worried is that I cannot believe that Houston has to play Purdue in Indianapolis as the 1 seed in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, it's almost like playing Louisville in Kentucky.
I know.
Who would do that?
Or playing North Carolina and Greensboro, and I don't know what that's. I don't know. I'm bringing up old stuff, but no, I just think when Purdue struggles with two things. They struggle with athleticism and they struggle with turnovers at times. And Houston is athletic and they turn you over. They're going to obviously Houston's going to blitz all those ball screens with Braden Smith. He turned it over 8 times against McNeese.
Yeah.
I love Braden Smith. I think he's a baller. I voted him Big Ten Player of the Year. He's one of my 5 favorite players to watch because I think he's one of the few dying breeds of like a really good passer, which I just love watching great passers. But I just think Houston. I think Houston would be the team that, in terms of a matchup, that if there's one game that could kind of get away from a team, or that one group could get away from a team, I think it's Houston.
Nick, let's go to the other side of that. What's the matchup you're looking forward to the most? I have an answer. I don't want to ask a leading question, but what game are you looking like? Hey, that's going to be a banger.
There's a lot. I think in terms of just fun to watch, BYU Alabama is going to be a really fun game.
Sure. Yeah.
Like what's amazing about that game is that game's total at 175.5 is 20 points higher than the next closest one. And to contrast it, the total for the Houston Purdue game is like 132. So I mean and with BYU, since February 11th, on Bart Torvik, you can sort by date. I love doing this. Since February 11th, BYU is the 4th ranked team in the country behind Duke, Houston, and Florida. So that's not a week sample. I didn't sort by a week. Like that's a pretty good sample size. That both these teams are mirror images of each other. It almost reminds me of, remember back in the day when Brett Bielema's Wisconsin Badgers or Paul Chryst Wisconsin Badgers would play Kirk Ferentz's Iowa Hawkeyes, and it would be like these two teams are the exact. They want to run the ball, they want to hit play action, they want to play field position, and they want to be good on special teams. And that game would come down to like who just did that better. And this game's like both teams want to play fast. They want to shoot threes. Who shoots the 3-ball better could end up telling a tale. But that game's exciting. Florida Maryland is really exciting to me. I'm just curious what Kevin Willard's group ends up looking like given all the distractions. And then also a little nugget. Teams are 1-7 in the game after a buzzer beater all time, which is interesting to think about. But there's a lot, Ravi. What game are you looking forward to?
Florida Maryland was my answer.
BYU.
Yeah.
I'm a BYU leaver.
BYU Alabama is probably going to be the most fun.
I went. The most fun to watch will be that game, but yeah, I don't necessarily. I don't think either of those teams are going to go win the title or anything like that. Maybe Bama could, but yeah, Florida Maryland will be fun. I picked Florida to win it all.
Yeah, me too.
I was nervous with 10 minutes left against UConn, but Walter Clayton Jr. just went completely bananas down the stretch. The only thing that makes me. I wonder where Maryland's focus level is at with all the Kevin Willard stuff. It's interesting to think about that. The only wild card in this game is how much matchup zone Maryland plays, and that could get Florida a little bit on their heels. But I don't know. I think Florida's freaking amazing. I think they are. Them and Duke just feel like they're both a little different right now.
I wish that I said this earlier before you came on, but I wish Maryland had been in a different part of the bracket. Because there's another world where I have them in the Final Four. Like, I really like this Maryland team. But you're right, Florida's a juggernaut. That's why I think that might be the best game. I tend to agree with you. BYU Alabama is going to probably be the most fun. Austin,
Yes.
there's games today.
Very much happy about it, too. We said at the beginning of the show that I felt like yesterday was like a mini sports sabbatical. I'm back in it now. I'm locked in. I'm ready.
We had a whole almost day off.
I know.
Is this one of those segments, if I'm doing a second chance bracket, I need to be paying attention to?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, let's do it.
Are
And
you
do it.
doing a second chance bracket?
Yeah.
And also fade me very hard because notoriously, and I'll give you this too. You probably don't remember this because you do this show every day, but I don't get to do it that often.
Sure.
We were still radio back when I was doing that.
Oh yeah, back in the day.
Tough,
Back in the olden days.
Yeah. Who would have thought? But thank you.
Back before the internet was invented.
Yes, pretty much. But it was, what was that, Black Friday that I had hosted with you for the Nebraska-Iowa game?
Yeah.
And I was making my way to Iowa City, and I remember we were doing the Bet on It segment, and you asked me, like, what's your pick for this weekend? I was like, well, I really like Arizona over Arizona State. And I was like, I really think that this is a rivalry game. I think Arizona's going to do well. I watched that game in a bar in Ames, Iowa, before Iowa State, K-State. Arizona lost 49-7, and they were down 35-0 in the first quarter. And I was like, nope, lock it in. Let's get it. Come on. And I remember just like horrifying watching it. And I was like, I can never go on that show ever again. I hope no one ever makes me make any like bets or picks or anything. But here I am now with my back against the wall in the Sweet 16.
You know what's super funny?
What?
If you had not brought that up, no one would have remembered.
But I remembered. I had to get it out in the open. And there's a new audience. I had to remind them that I'm bad. So that's why I'm trying to like let people know now.
That's
Fade
Austin's
me.
way of telling you these picks are for entertainment purposes only.
Absolutely.
This is not financial advice.
It has never been.
Um,
Although I'll tell you this, I hit on every one of my first to 10
Did you?
in the 32. Yeah, I was pretty proud of that.
Let's start with what Nick Boss said might be the most entertaining game of the weekend. BYU, Alabama, -5.5. Our guy B. Edwards has Alabama here.
First, I'm going completely over in this.
Meet me at the rim.
Because how could you not want to watch these two teams just run up and down the floor?
Yeah, I need at least 180. I need 90 apiece here. So,
And to be fair, that's what Nate Oates wants to do anyway.
Yeah.
He's just going to run and run and run.
yes.
I don't know if BYU can keep up for the full 40 minutes, but I'd like to think that they could keep it closer. I do think Alabama runs them out late.
You think so?
I think so.
Yeah, so I'm not really sure what to do with this one because I've seen Alabama too many times just become like a runway to the rim for other teams. And for a team that's as capable scoring as BYU, that seems like a really dangerous proposition.
Yep.
Now, my boy Kenneth Pomeroy does have it as a 5-point win for Alabama, so that's right in the neighborhood of where this line is.
Thank you, Kenneth.
I'm gonna go. I'm going the other way. Give me
Again, smart move on your part. Listen to what I say first and run the opposite direction.
Give me. I think the safest bet is the over. But I think if I have to pick a side, I'm going BYU +5.5.
I don't hate that. The only difference maker for me is that I just in years past, it's felt like if Alabama can't continue just to put the foot all the way down to the floor, that they can't really keep up, especially late into tournament runs. But I feel more confident about their ability to do it this season, and I can't put my finger on to why, because their SEC tournament wasn't exactly like how I want them to end. Their big game performances when they played Auburn and they had game day there and all that stuff, I wasn't, like overtly impressed by their ability in the biggest of games. But maybe it's because of their opponent BYU that maybe they're like, hey, look, it's not the biggest game we're in yet. Now, their next matchup, I'm not sure that I'd be so sold on, but for today, I feel like I can go with Alabama.
To be fair as well, Alabama in Ken Palm defensive rating is 29th.
Yeah.
As opposed to BYU 72nd. So part of it is hard to separate what I see when they play like Florida, who's really good, obviously, versus what they are in general. The ratings would say they're better defensively in general than what I've seen. And so that's really hard to separate. Sometimes you just can't unsee certain things.
But there are also sometimes the Sweet 16 is the perfect round where you can just close your eyes and you're like, all right, I'm watching Alabama play and they have for sure just given up an open layup.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yes. I can see that happening a lot. The only other thing that I think is going to be interesting here is Alabama is the #1 tempo team in the country.
Yes.
Even though BYU likes to score, they're pretty average tempo-wise. Right? So I will be curious to see maybe there is some fatigue that sets in with BYU and the pace that Alabama's going to push this thing at. Because I don't think BYU certainly not going to try and slow it down at all.
Yeah.
And so that'll be super interesting. But
well, and then you have to remember too that it's not like BYU hasn't played a bunch of nobodies either. It's just they've played like different style of good teams. In the Big 12, like you've played, some of the top teams, not including Kansas, in your own conference.
Hey, they were number one. People forget that.
Yeah, that was a good win. Thank you, Pop Isaacs. Appreciate what you did.
Hey, that was the one thing we'll remember Pop Isaacs for ever.
Did you see the tweets after where people were like, hand up, I jumped on Pop Isaacs and might have injured his hip after the Kansas win? I thought that was funny. I was like, oh, well,
That's what happened. You got to be careful rushing the court there.
You do.
Let's move on to what I think is the best game of the day, Maryland and Florida. Florida's a 6.5-point favorite.
Yeah. I almost wish that number was bigger because I like Florida that much.
Really?
I really do. I think this is a chance, one, because Maryland isn't necessarily – I think they're going to come out a little more focused. I wouldn't be surprised. In fact, my first attempt in this game is actually Maryland. But I think just Florida in a full contest, top to bottom, I don't know that I've seen a team like Florida and like Duke, which I know we'll get to, that are just more head and shoulders above the rest of the pack than where we are right now. I truthfully feel that there's really not two teams that are better than the rest of the field in years past than these two teams.
So I actually think the number's a little heavy. I think Florida wins. I don't think they cover. I'm going to take Maryland plus the 6.5, but I do think Florida wins this game.
You're doing a great job of just going exactly the opposite direction.
I know. I can start I can start first next time because this is where I was leaning no matter what. But I do think – but I'm also very high on Maryland. I said it to Nick. I've said it to kind of all week. If Maryland wasn't playing Florida here, I'd probably have them in the Final Four.
We did get our Nick nugget, though. No nuggets, fellas, but we did get one from him about buzzer beaters and not coming off of that very
coming
well.
1-7. But I believe that was straight up.
Yeah.
So
it's also fair to say, too, that the theory of like the buzzer beaters and all that other stuff when it comes to, the NCAA tournament, and you have Cinderellas that come in. This is not a usual Cinderella field. In fact, there's not. I mean, Coach Cal's a Cinderella, I guess.
He's the only one. Really?
I don't want to see him in slippers, that's for sure. But when it comes to like Maryland, they've had a lot of time to process the win, to get moving on past that, and to deal with internally whatever else is going on. So I think it just comes down to basketball. And again, for me, it's just Florida. Florida is just much better.
So I think the distractions with Kevin Willard are a bigger deal than the buzzer beater for sure. That's my only hesitation here with taking Maryland to cover. I do think, as long as he keep paying us, Derek Queen and them are going to be able to at least cover. I don't think they win, but I do think Maryland will cover. The biggest spread of the day, Arizona and Duke. Duke is a 9.5-point favorite.
Ooh, me like it.
Okay, you said you want to start this one.
I'm going to go first here.
Okay.
So I'm taking Duke and the points.
Bang.
I'm going minus 9.5. And for two reasons, really. I agree. Duke and Florida, I think, are the best teams in the field here. Although I don't think they're as head and shoulders above Houston as maybe you do. But I do think there's a clear gap between them and the rest of the field if you kind of put Houston in there as well. The other thing is, I will never, ever, 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 to quote the great John Bishop, I will never bet.
Well, even you.
Ever, never.
Yeah, there we go. Appreciate you, JB.
He touched it. He touched it.
I will never bet on Caleb Love, ever.
Oh, we've got an ultimate showdown between us right now.
In a million years.
So are you ready for this?
Duke minus 9.5.
I'm also going Duke minus 9.5. I'm trying to find it on here, but I know I put it in last night just because I was bored.
Yeah.
I want Caleb Love's over points. I need to figure out where I put that in.
Can you take his over shots too?
Well, see, there's no player that I have bet on in an individual point total.
Yeah.
That I am more fearful that he could end up with 0 points or hit 30. There's not a single player in this entire tournament of 2 week span that I'm there's a high probability that he could just go over and pull himself out of the game and just RJ Lewis it by the end of the day, or he makes 35 points. Did you see him hold himself back against the post or pregame comments with Duke? He was doing his I think it was the pregame press conference or something. He was sitting there and they asked him, they're like, well, I mean, like, what do you think? How do you beat Duke? Like, what's the recipe? And he like leaned in and he just goes, no. And then he just gives some generic answer. And like, you could tell right there in that moment, he was like, I could say it right now, but no material needed.
I'm just going to go for a 40 burger. That's what we're doing.
A 40 or 4. He's somewhere in between there. Yeah, I do like Duke again. I just think if Caleb Love makes it fun, I don't think Arizona makes it interesting if you follow.
Absolutely. Last one of the day. Arkansas is a 5.5-point dog. Our true Cinderella, John Calipari, against Texas Tech. You want to go first? Or me to go first?
Yeah, I'll get this one.
Right.
I never liked Tech in this tournament.
Okay.
And so I'm happily surprised that they're there. I'm always a Red Raider at heart, Sydney ride or die. But I feel like you have to go Arkansas here.
So
I'm gonna go Arkansas just outright.
This is the first place we agree. I am also taking Arkansas, and if for no other reason, somehow this happens to me a lot. Somehow, and I'm not a victim or anything. It just is a funny.
What a sentence! What a way to lead in.
I just think it's a funny thing that sort of happens. It happened with Mick Cronin, where it's like, I don't even like Mick Cronin, and somehow I became the Mick Cronin.
Get that guy a hot meal. That's all that he wanted.
I'm so hungry. He's like Oliver Twist. Please, sir, may I have some more? I don't even really like Mick Cronin, and somehow I became this Mick Cronin defender. I like that he is honest, even sometimes at the expense of decorum. But he's honest. I feel like I know where everybody stands with Mick Cronin. I don't really like him. It's sort of become the same thing with John Calipari. I see the warts of John Calipari, but in everyone's rush to call him a bum and say he can't coach and things like that, I'm like, well, I mean, the player acquisition and all that, like that's part of the coaching and getting teams to the tournament every year when you're literally starting over pretty much every year. Like that's harder than it sounds. I get that there's a lot of talent there, but that's not the easiest thing in the world to install a brand new system with brand new guys every year, which he was doing at Kentucky. So I became sort of this Calipari defender, and people are like, oh, big John Calipari guy. So his win over Patino was especially sweet for me.
Right.
But so I'm just going to write it. I'm just going to embrace
Why not?
that I'm the John Calipari guy, and we're going to go with Arkansas.
Well, and you know me, I love chaos and just like upsetting fan bases. Nothing would please me more and just like a personal like vibe than to just egg on Big Blue Twitter and just be like, well, Coach Cal just needed to get out of Lexington to win. That's all he needed to do.
Toxic fan base.
I listen, I live for burner accounts and people just like tweeting to get other people upset.
Yeah.
And I especially love tweeting at people that have their avatars as them in cars wearing sunglasses.
Oh, yeah, it's terrific.
They're the best ones to get upset. I'm fighting for that today. My Tech and Arkansas contest. I will be fighting that the entire time. I'm going to find the first. All I do is I just go to Twitter. I search Kentucky Calipari, and it just pulls up, and I will definitely get a UK logo person with like 19 like underscore X and like different consonants in their username. And I'll just berate that man until the end of the day.
Does that we're not going to do all of tomorrow's game, but does that mean you're also taking Tennessee -4.5 to beat Kentucky just for the chaos factor?
I could, but wouldn't it be more fun to watch Kentucky just go a little bit further and like everyone gets excited that there's a possible matchup going? I'll debate that tomorrow. I'll figure that out. I haven't decided that line yet. That's a good thought, though.
I think ultimately Cal going further in the tournament than Kentucky in his first year away from Kentucky.
Yes.
I think that's the chaos storyline you need to be rooting for.
Yeah. You're right. I hadn't considered that, but now that you say it out loud, I think that is a good way to go.
Because I don't think they couldn't meet until the championship game. So that seems unlikely.
Yeah.
That seems unlikely. I say we root for the chaos.
Welcome to the pot stir, Ravi. Welcome to the pot stir.
That's bet on it. Those are our picks.